Mr. Burroughs, I'm afraid I bring sad tidings.
The director of John Carter, Andrew Stanton, has finally shared what the sequel Gods of Mars would have been about, and it sounds really good. John Carter was honestly ahead of its time, but unfortunately, it's mostly remembered for flopping instead of how good it actually was. If you haven't seen John Carter, or just need a quick refresher, here's the basic rundown. The story kicks off in 1881, with Edgar Rice Burroughs attending his uncle John Carter's funeral. Carter was a former Confederate Army captain who died suddenly, and per his weirdly specific wishes, his body's locked in a tomb that can only be opened from the inside. Mysterious, right? Burroughs is handed Carter's personal journal, and that's where the real adventure begins. Flashback to 1868 in Arizona, Carter is doing his own thing when Union Colonel Powell tries to recruit him to fight against the Apaches. Carter's not interested, escapes, but doesn't get too far before running into trouble. After a wild encounter with Apaches, he and a wounded Powell duck into a cave full of gold. Just when things couldn't get any stranger, a weird alien dude called a Thurn shows up and attacks them. Carter kills him and accidentally activates this medallion that instantly zaps him to Mars, or as the locals call it, Barsoom. Once there, Carter realizes he's got super strength and can jump like a superhero thanks to the lower gravity. He gets captured by the Tharks, a tribe of tall, green, four-armed Martians led by a warrior named Tarkus, and that's where Carter's out-of-this-world journey really kicks off. Meanwhile, on Mars, there's a long-standing war going on between two red Martian cities, Helium and Zodanga. It's been dragging on for 1,000 years. Sabthan, the ruler of Zodanga, gets his hands on a powerful weapon from this shady alien leader named Matai Shang, who's part of the mysterious Thurns. With that edge, Sab then offers a truce, but only if he gets to marry Helium's princess, Deja Thorus. Pretty sketchy. Deja's not about that life, so she runs off, and that's when Carter swoops in and saves her. Carter, Deja, and Sola, Tarkus' daughter, head to this sacred river spot to figure out how Carter can get back to Earth. There, they uncover that the medallions like the one Carter used to teleport are powered by something called the Ninth Ray, which also powers Sabthan's new weapon. But before they can do much with that info, they're ambushed by these savage creatures called the Warhon, working under Shang's orders. Carter and Deja end up captured and taken to Zodanga. Feeling defeated, Deja reluctantly agrees to marry Sabthan and secretly tells Carter how to use the medallion to get home, but Carter decides to stick around. He gets caught by Shang, who spills the tea about the Thurns. They basically go from planet to planet, stirring up chaos and draining the place dry. Barsoom's just their next victim, and Sabthan's their puppet. Carter escapes with Sola and returns to the Tharks to ask for help, but things have gone sideways. Tarkus has been overthrown by this brutal warrior, Tai Haggis. Carter and a wounded Tarkus are forced into a fight against two giant white apes in an arena. Carter defeats Haggis and ends up becoming the new leader of the Tharks. The Thark Army charges into Zodanga, and when they figure out the enemy troops are actually outside Helium, John and the Tharks take over Zodangan airships and head to Helium. John beats the Zodangan forces, Sabthan dies, and Shang barely escapes. John ends up marrying Deja and becomes Prince of Helium. On their wedding night, he decides he's all in on living on Mars and tosses his medallion, but Shang seizes the moment, pops back up, and messes with him again, this time sending him back to Earth. John then spends years hunting for another medallion on Earth. When he seems to suddenly die, he leaves behind some pretty strange funeral instructions, hinting that he might have actually found a medallion. If he returns to Mars, his Earth body would just be left in a lifeless state. He also names his nephew Burroughs as his protector. Fast forward to present day, Burroughs rushes to John's tomb, decodes the clues and opens it, only to be ambushed by a Thurn. But then John shows up and shoots the Thurn, revealing that he never found a medallion after all. Instead, he had set a trap to draw out a Thurn and win Shang's challenge. With the Thurn now dead, John grabs the medallion and heads back to Barsoom. Now, about the sequel plans. Back when John Carter was gearing up for its 2012 release, director Andrew Stanton hinted at follow-up movies if the first did well, but kept the details under wraps. That is until now. In a new chat with The Wrap, Stanton finally opened up about what the sequel, called Gods of Mars, would have been about. He explained that the sequel was going to kick off with a prologue, just like the first movie, but with a cool twist. Each film would have a different character narrating it. In the first one, it was Willem Dafoe as Tars Tarkas. For the sequel, it would have been Deja Thorus doing the voiceover. The idea was to give new viewers a quick recap of the story so far using eye-catching visuals, maybe artwork or some other creative style. Then, you'd realize Deja was actually telling this story to her baby, her and John Carter's child, Thorus. And the heartbreaking part? She was telling the story of the father the child would never get to meet. After that touching moment, her father, Tardos Mors, would step in and say she's exhausted and that the grandfather would take over for a bit while he puts her to bed. But plot twist, it wouldn't actually be him. It would turn out to be Matai Shang in disguise, using his shape-shifting powers, and he would kidnap the baby. Then boom, opening credits roll. Right after the credits, the next shot would be Carter, lying in his funeral suit out in the middle of the desert, looking like a corpse, and then he wakes up. John Carter was supposed to kick off a whole trilogy based on Edgar Rice Burroughs' Barsoom books, but it ended up being a one-and-done deal, and a lot of that came down to problems no one really saw coming when the project first got the green light. One of the biggest issues? The marketing totally missed the mark. Disney's new marketing head at the time, M.T. Carney, decided to drop Of Mars from the title. Director Andrew Stanton didn't agree with that move, but he didn't push back either. He later told the Wrap, "It wasn't my call, it was suggested and I didn't fight it." That decision, along with everything else, pretty much set the sequel plans on a downhill path. Promos started showing up online in July 2011. Teasers, posters, all that, but they left out some key stuff. No mention of Stanton, even though he directed Finding Nemo, and no shout-out to Burroughs, the guy who created Tarzan. These were names that could have helped draw attention, but Disney didn't use them. It was Stanton's first time directing a big live-action movie, and while Disney had faith in him, that confidence didn't really show in the way they promoted the film. In the end, the marketing was so unclear and forgettable that there was almost no chance for a sequel to happen. Even though John Carter didn't get its sequels, what Stanton had planned sounds pretty amazing. He described a scene where Carter just casually takes off his jacket and starts walking through the desert, totally calm. Then, kind of like a scene from Lawrence of Arabia, a Thark riding a thoat shows up on the horizon. The Thark knows exactly who Carter is and says someone's been looking for him. Turns out it's Kantos K, played by James Purefoy, who's been searching forever, following rivers and rumors, just hoping to find Carter. He's stunned to finally track him down and tells him he needs to return to Helium immediately to help. Carter rushes back, expecting a reunion, but instead, he finds out time has passed since the prologue. Well, that's it for today.